This episode is brought to you by BigMooseCoffeeCompany.co.
Pal. Welcome back, everybody, to episode, again, we don't know the name.
We don't know, we really have to start keeping count.
But we do know it's part 2 of the ForRangers Ultra special.
Yes, we do know that for certain.
And our podcast location is different. We're not...
It's very different. Look around.
We're not in the...
Also, this feels a little odd because we do have somebody sitting with us who, for anyone on YouTube, they'll be able to see him. We're just not talking to her at all at this point.
We're going to bring her in, don't worry.
Okay, don't
but
worry.
We're actually at the location of our host as well, which is very nice. We're in
and very generous.
Borough in London. Is that the area that we're in?
Yep.
Yeah, Borough in London.
Sorry, we're northern.
Yeah, it's all the same down south, isn't it? We're in Borough in London, the shadow of the Shard for people outside of London. We can see that pretty much from here. But
the shadow, for sure.
The shadow.
I'll leave.
Or more importantly, we're in the vicinity of Save the Rhino HQ, which is a fitting place to be for the day of our social, which is happening in a mere hour and a bit.
Or just over a month ago when you were listening to this. But for us, that's what's happening today.
Yeah, and so we thought we'd continue the ForRangers Ultra special in part 2, like we promised in the first episode, by bringing in the one and only Cathy Dean, CEO from Save the Rhino, and we gave you a bit of a big up in the last episode, saying how good you and your team were at doing what you do, but we didn't feel like we was in the position to tell the world what you do, because as much as we know and love about what you do, you know it obviously a hell of a lot more than what we do.
I think it's 18 years this year.
18 years in specifically rhino conservation?
Yeah. That's the only species I've ever tried to save.
And she's saving them slowly but surely. But it's we're going to delve into the world of rhino conservation in a second, but we should probably open up by talking about your personal experience of the ForRangers Ultra, because you, as well as being in the whole in the room when we was kind of concepting this and designing the idea of it, it'd be quite easy to design this and say, yeah, that looks good, I'll let other people crack on, but you were the first front and center of I'm the first one on that race list, and the contingent that you took with you, there was you in a group of 4, wasn't there?
4 of us all together. So there was me, husband Kenneth, who's done lots of ultras and marathons with me previously. He's done more than I have. There was Brian Hemmings, who got Save the Rhino into running ultra marathons full stop. He did the Marathon des Sables back in 2001. And then he rang up my predecessor and our board of trustees and said, you guys should do the Marathon des Sables in rhino costumes. So when I was going for my job interviews in 2001, Brian and the 3 trustees at the time, my predecessor at Save the Rhino, the events manager, they were all training for the MDS, and I was so impressed that these weren't just trustees who turned up, wrote a check, and came to quarterly meetings. They're actually prepared to do the MDS and in rhino costume, rotating it between them. That was kind of what made me want to start running, because I hadn't run since school. So I signed up to do London Marathon that following April in 2002, and then I said to Kenneth, we're going to do the MDS next year with another gang. So I blame Brian, basically, that it was all his fault.
So thanks, Brian, we appreciate that.
And then the 4th member of the team was a lovely guy called Ollie Tovey, who's coming back here in a minute. And Ollie emailed us out the blue back in 2005, said, I see you've done the MDS, I'd like to do that with you. And said, well, fair goes, but actually we're doing another ultra in the Atacama, will you come and do that with us? So he did. He joined us in 2006 for another ultra in 2008, and both times he really got injured. He got heat stroke, he busted his ankles, he did all sorts of things, so he's never finished. So actually getting him to the ultra, ForRangers Ultra last year, the main task was not actually about getting the rhino costume to the finish, it was get Ollie to the finish.
And we got him there just about. He was taped and the boy fell apart in a few times, but he was absolutely I think he had said to himself before the race, there is no way that I am not getting to the finish line.
And he got shin splints, and he wasn't making anything up. He really...
he was in pieces.
You could tell.
He was
it would have taken a rhino to stop him. It would have.
But no, it was amazing to watch him do that. We actually mentioned him in the first one and how he thought he was hallucinating when Eliud came out of a helicopter to greet him.
We told him he was.
Yeah. What are you talking about?
Took
You
a
told him he
photo,
was. Fantastic. Oh, if we'd have been in on that, we'd have kept it up to this.
As if we're going to get Eliud Kipchoge. What are you talking about? Anyway, he's going to probably pop in to the house actually while this episode's being recorded, so he'll come in and say hi, no doubt. But yeah, to see you guys go through, because you not only did the ultramarathon in the MDS and the Atacama and ours, you did it carrying the rhino costume, which I'm not
going to go and grab it, but it is just over there, and it is enormous.
It's funny how much bigger they look when they're inside. When they're outside,
exactly.
they're kind of normal rhino-sized. When they're in your house, they tend to take over.
Yeah, that's a good high percentage of your living room there that's taken up with it.
If you haven't seen this rhino costume, you can find it quite easily on our ForRangers media. If you scroll even down a few, you'll see it. If you're on the Save the Rhino website, you'll see it, or you have probably already seen it at the London Marathon. It's quite an iconic thing for the London Marathon. You see the rhino at least once every...
bit of a story about them. So again, my predecessors before I joined Save the Rhino heard about these costumes. They were made for opera singers to stand on stage and sing this opera based on a play called Rhinoceros, believe it or not. And so it's one thing if you're just standing still, you've got no visibility, and actually you'd have to be a really good singer to project your voice out, because there's such a limited kind of, it's like a face mask and snorkel kind of space. There's really not a great deal of visibility in it. So we rang up and said, could we have them? And they said yes. So we inherited about 20. And over the years, a few have fallen to bits. One, it was a 2-man costume, got stolen. We got sent a ransom note. And there was, we sent a photograph, send us money or you won't see your rhino again. And we sent it to the police and they blew it up. And there was a little sign on the gate, which they could see in the photo, and that led them to the location. And they went into this barn and there was a rhino costume. So we got it back. We've got a kids one, which is really cute, but you're not allowed to make kids run marathons. So the most I think the kids ones have done is a 2K run, something like that.
You say yet.
Wrong country, innit? It's Korea, they do that for all the day.
BTU Juniors coming soon.
But so as a charity, I guess we're known for doing the endurance races. London every year, we've got 50 odd runners. We've always got 15 or 16 rhino costumes out. And it's not just running, but making it that bit harder. Because, of course, for the ultras, you've got to carry all your stuff underneath it. So we've had the original designer back to adapt it. She built the Teletubbies. She used to work with the Jim Henson, the company
what
making
a job
Muppets and all of that. Yeah. Lovely woman called Nikki Lyons, who's, I think, mad as a box of frogs, but delightful.
You'd expect that if that was, she was
if
designing,
you built the Teletubbies.
Yeah, and you were designing Muppets for a living. But yeah, it's a beast of a thing, and that was an extra paragraph on the risk assessment that I didn't think I'd ever have to write.
It had its own tracker, didn't it?
Yeah,
so
we had to. You doctored the costume to put the backpack on, and the one thing I said is you've got to at least have the backpack with mandatory kit in. Not that you didn't weigh enough already, and then said it needs its own tracker. I had visions of, some mating rituals going on, and rhinos saying, hey, look, new guy in town. Let's
2 dots on top of each other for the whole journey. Looks bloody suspicious.
But no, it was one of those things where, we're flying around and moving animals and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden this rhino comes bobbing along in the distance, and you're kind of thinking, what is... Oh yeah, it's the guys in the rhino costume again.
At least once a day, me, Ryan and Michael would be sort of hiding in the shrubbery waiting to take photos of the next runner, and the rhino would appear and you just fall about.
It's so incongruous. I know, for heaven's sakes, we're in Africa, we didn't expect to see a rhino, but actually my worry was, because occasionally we get lovely supporters who want to do bucket collections. They'll often go to a zoo, and the zoo's very strict about which enclosures you're allowed to stand next to in animal costumes. Apparently if you're next to baboons or monkeys, they go mental. We thought, what are the chances of running into what are they called, a pack, a herd of baboons, whatever they are.
If anybody does know,
troop,
please tweet.
I guess.
Yeah.
I think it's a troop.
A troop of baboons. Sounds convincing. But yeah, anyway. Yeah, there was one point, there was some dogs when we were going through that village on Lewa, and there were some dogs that started trying to bite the back of it, so all the rangers started chucking stones. Luckily their hand-eye coordination is pretty good, and they did get the dogs, not Kenneth in the rhino costume. But add that to your risk assessment for next year.
Well, it's always a thing, we not even wild dogs, just dogs. they could be semi-wild, I suppose, in this case. But so the rhino costume had been doctored. It's bumbling along and bimbling away through this thing, and you guys managed to get not only every one of your team, but the rhino to the finish line, which is...
And not that we're competitive, but we weren't last either.
No, that's not even...
Worthy of note. Wearing that costume, definitely not in last position.
We got a slow motion video of Kenneth taking that off on a really hot day, and you can just say, the last place I want to be is in that costume. Like, he had to carry that day because it was so hot. So
especially after he's been in it.
But it does the job, right? It's a very good tool, a vessel for raising awareness. It's been everywhere, right?
I think it was built for running marathons.
Yeah.
But we're a small charity. There's just 9 of us based in an office in central London. And when people hear that there are just 9 of us, they seem to think that we're much bigger. And it's because every year on the London Marathon, they're always featured. There are any number of BBC's surveys, and the Metro, what are our favourite 10 costumes in the London Marathon, and it's always the rhino, and the crowds are looking for you every year. But the simple name, Save the Rhino, does what it says on the tin. We've got a lovely logo, I think. We've got the costumes, and that is here's Oliver.
Hi,
Oliver.
Or it could be Dave the Rhino, as we call him, Dave Hill now.
It could be Dave the Rhino. So my lovely event manager, David, who's running the ForRangers Ultra this year.
Yes, he is.
He was so inspired being back at house last year.
And he's not done one before, so he's going
to have a great
into the fray. But we have too many Daves in the BTU world, so we now call him Dave the Rhino.
Yeah, Dave the Rhino.
I feel like you probably heard that before. We were pretty proud of it.
Well, it's sort of, you don't need to get inventive. I'm Cathy Rhino on my right name, so I guess one of us ought to let Ollie in, because Kenneth...
there we go.
Here we go. I've got staff. It's okay.
But I think one of the things that it did surprise me was that you were 9 staff. When we started, I think when I was coming down to the office, I didn't know really what to expect, but in my head it was hundreds. Because of the work that you do and the impact you have and the reach that you have, just in my head without thinking about it, I just assumed it was hundreds.
Oh, me too, absolutely.
Like some of the big cancer charity sizes, the RLNI, you get as much exposure and cover from it, which is actually credit to what you guys do. Because it's as much as conservation on a whole is a massive area. I imagine saving one particular species. I guess you've got like the pangolins, you've got so many different species, and you guys just are there everywhere. So it's
got the rhinos covered. Oh well, I wish we had.
That's it.
They are still getting poached, but the rates are dropping.
So talk us through the numbers though, anyway. So I think
so. You've actually got the 5 species of rhinos. Yeah. So the white and black that we'll see during the Ultra, and then in India and Nepal you've got the greater one-horned, about 3,500 of them, and in Sumatra, Java you've got maybe between 40 and 80 Sumatrans, and 67 Javans. So it sounds like the African species, 20,000 white, 5,000 black, sounds like they're better off, but they're the ones getting hit by the poaching crisis. So when I started at Save the Rhino, there are about half the number of black rhinos there are now. They only ever have one calf at a time. It takes them 2.5, 3 years between calves to have the next one. So it's a shame. I wish they bred 5 times a year and popped out litters, and the job would be so much easier. Yeah.
So, all right, guys, we can go home now. We've saved the rhino.
I could retire. I could become a lunchtime alcoholic.
Someone wouldn't. With the work you're doing, someone wouldn't come and say, right, we need to save this animal now. Come on.
There you go. You
there's a lot to learn in rhino conservation, and I'm still getting to grips with it now. But,
well, that's the thing. I think the first time I met you, you went through the different aspects in which you work, and that was quite fascinating to hear. So I think I'm going to test my memory now. This is going to be like a school test. So there was education.
Yep.
So that's going into schools.
In and around really important rhino areas, working with the school kids so that they understand kind of how important rhinos are in the ecosystem, which then benefits them because, all the ways that they shape the environment and make, like a wallow becomes a mud bath or you get little pools of water for birds, for insects, the dung beetles, actually black rhinos, because they're browsers and they open up sort of bits of really dense vegetation. In areas where black rhinos have been poached out, you won't find cheetahs because they don't have open areas to hunt in anymore. So the kids learn about sort of the natural shaping processes that black rhinos will have, but they also learn about, all the jobs that come as a result. So employment, tourist guiding, being a ranger, and so they sort of see how important the rhinos are for their area. So yeah, working with kids is a really important part of the job.
Number one.
Yeah.
Number two, I believe I don't know what the official bit, but it was more on a governmental level, wasn't it? It was like trying to control, or not control, but trying to help pass legislation and help governments impose stricter bans or things in country.
Yeah,
that's right.
It's supporting the law enforcement effort. So your security and monitoring, all of that. Not so much at government level, actually. We're working more with the NGOs on the ground, because they're the ones who know how to protect their rhinos, and then just rhino monitoring. If you don't know what you've got, how can you protect it? How can you keep it safe? So going out looking for rhinos every day. If the areas we run through in Kenya, they see every animal every 1.1 days. So if they haven't seen an animal for 3 days, they'll be sending search parties to look for that specific animal.
Right. Well, there you go. So you can keep hold of numbers and keep those reports coming in. The question I have in particular, so I was relatively naive on the non-African rhinos, so the Nepalese, and I guess a lot of people that are listening have never heard of the one-horned and the Sumatrans. And is that a poaching crisis, or is that environmental?
It's environmental and huge population. So think of population of India and of Nepal, and actually the best habitat, the best area for rhinos is along the rivers, the Brahmaputra. So every year we've just come to the end of monsoon season now. So glaciers melt in the Himalayas, they come down the rivers, and you get this huge, massive flooding. And given how populated Assam, one of the northeastern states in India is, there are villages all the way around the park boundaries. And when the floodwaters come, those are displacing people from their houses, but also animals. So they come out the park, there's a big highway, you get lots of roadkill every year. Animals drown, although greater one-horn rhinos like to wallow a lot. Every year you see the counts of animals that have drowned, tigers, even tigers, because it's such powerful floods.
Wow.
So that's the greater one-horned. It's sort of the habitat's limited. In Nepal, they've got a real problem with invasive plant species. That it's like climate change, you get warmer, wetter, more humid conditions, so you get invasive species that are toxic or not palatable for greater one-horn rhinos. So there's less food for them to eat. Therefore they naturally self-regulate, they breed less, and so on. And then the Sumatras and Javans, again, they've been forced into tiny pockets of forests. We've all heard of palm oil, deforestation, those sorts of issues. So, and then the areas they live are getting fragmented. You've got big roads going through them to improve access for people to get to, wherever they need to go. So they're not... there are so few animals, they're not finding each other to breed. And with Sumatran rhinos, we know enough about them to know that if you're a female and you haven't had a calf by the time you're about 12, you develop all sorts of fertility problems. So it's kind of a ticking time bomb of not enough other animals to swipe left on, or do I mean swipe right?
Swipe right. Say, you need a Sumatran rhino Tinder.
Yeah.
Rinder, we could call it.
There's a whole bunch of jokes to be made there. But
the horniest side around.
Good.
Yeah. Number three. Number four, I think, is it like frontline or on the ground? Boots on the ground?
That's part of the monitoring.
I'm going to let you fill 4 and 5 in. So go for 4 and 5.
Yeah, come on, Chris, back up.
Linking... sorry, I'm really fluffing that one. It's putting rhino conservation professionals in touch with each other and bring them together for workshops. So the most recent workshop we did was about canine units. And again, I think we saw the canine units at Lewa at the start of last year's Ultra.
Yeah.
Those dogs, bloody wonderful. I mean, yes, they can track poachers. They can also, some of them, the Belgian Malinois are trained to bite and hold to disable the gun arm, and that would be bloody terrifying.
Yeah,
being chased after by one of those.
I got to see one of those on Old Jogi with Jamie, and he did a live display, and that thing
with a bite suit.
That thing flew the length of this room. It probably a good 20 meters. It was airborne before it hit that guy's arm.
And
that poor bugger.
Slow motion, 2 guns like a police officer.
But they're better than a gun because they're non-lethal and they can go around trees, whereas you can't shoot a poacher through a tree. The bullets only travel straight lines. So actually, The dogs do really well, but they're loved in the local communities, because you often get these, a kid has got herding goats, has got lost, or an older person with dementia has wandered off, and you can put the bloodhounds on the scent, and those dogs will find them. They're also checking at roadblocks for, there's some criminality up in the north, there's guns and drugs coming down, and actually the communities don't want criminals in their midst. So picking anything up at roadblocks, the dogs you can't bribe them. You can reward them with the sausage when they've done a good job, but you'll never corrupt a dog.
Yeah.
I mean, they're fantastic.
Yeah, and I think that's, in a lot of these countries, there's a lot of, I think if anyone is in the conservation world, they may have seen that documentary on Vice with the KWS. There's so many questions on corruption and stuff on a sale that it actually creates a lot of mistrust in the local community. And like you say, if a dog, you can't corrupt a dog, so there's no wonder they...
So that kind of, we organise workshops, we facilitate them, we fly people to them, and putting people in a room together for 4 or 5 days, actually that's a really good way to share information. It's not just being in the room, it's the beer and campfire time afterwards. We all know that. That's when you get the real things agreed.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's
going back to part 1, that's basically how this race came into existence.
Yeah.
Beers.
Maybe we shouldn't have had the third beer, but anyway. And then another of the strategies is trying to tackle the illegal demand for rhino horn. So in the consumer countries, in Vietnam and China. And we're doing a mixture of things, behaviour change campaigns. So think back to trying to persuade people in Britain not to smoke anymore. When I was growing up, you go around to some friends' houses and the curtains and the furniture and everything stank of smoke. And then a few years ago, it was not smoking in pubs anymore, not smoking on the top floors of buses. It takes a while. And that's, I suppose, the one worry with the behaviour change campaigns is, can we really exert enough peer pressure on the wealthy Vietnamese and Chinese who are buying rhino horn while we've still got rhinos left to play with, kind of thing. So that's, but we're also working on law enforcement with partners on the ground in Vietnam and China, making sure that when there is a court case that you've got observers in there every day, so that the judge knows that it's going to get reported on, that they can't just take something lightly.
Money,
yeah. And then the fifth way we do is really all the raising awareness. So whether that, it's running things and being very visible and as high profile as we can, but the website there are quite a lot of controversial issues in rhino conservation. We discuss them on the website, what we call thorny issues, yet another horny reference.
That's good.
E-zines, the whole thing, we do quite a lot of press and media, whenever there's a rhino story these days, luckily.
Sky News the other day, actually.
Sky News the other day.
Indeed, we saw that.
Luckily, they do come to us. So we need to be on top of the issues and what's happening and the news stories, and be ready to explain in non-scientific, non-jargon what it's all actually about. And get people inspired.
And that's it. I think it's a multifaceted problem that needs a number of different avenues to do it, doesn't it? And that's where I think the challenge lies. But just to explain to listeners that are kind of maybe they've probably heard of the poaching crisis. They've heard of where
you're going with that. I'm sure they'll have heard of rhinos.
They've heard of rhinos. If you've not heard of rhinos, Google rhinos, and you don't. If you get a gladiator, if you get a gladiator from the 90s, it's not that TV show. It's not that an actual rhino.
Although we hope he's well.
But I think there's just a lot of the numbers terrified me, if I'm honest, when I found out the numbers in terms of like ranger deaths, poaching numbers and stuff like that. So maybe just talk us through how it's been in the last 18 years in terms of numbers, and if sorry, putting you on the spot for any hard stats, we can put them in the descriptions and stuff, but just a general idea of rhinos that were here, rhinos that have perished over the last couple of years, and kind of numbers that we're floating with now.
Yeah, okay, so in 1994, the year that charity was formed, we're 25 years old this year, there were 2,400 black rhinos. And that was because the last poaching crisis in the 1970s, 1980s, early 1990s, and as always, they're being killed for the horn. And back in those days, there were actually 5 countries that wanted the horn. There was Yemen for carving, they make ornamental dagger handles out of horn. Traditional Chinese medicine in China and in Taiwan and even South Korea. And then Japan was using rhino horn as well. Can't remember what for. But so there'd been a poaching crisis, lots of law enforcement, some law changes in those countries, and poaching ground to a halt. Every year, maybe 10 killed, and that was all. But can cope with that. So there's been like 25 years of slow, careful rhino conservation measures since then. And as I say, they breed slowly. So it takes getting on for 20 years to double your numbers. And then what kicked off the most recent poaching crisis, which began in 2008, was rising prosperity in China, Vietnam. And, there's a general rule, which is once average household income is more than $10,000 a year, you've got money for luxuries. So we might spend that on cars or a wine cellar or digging out the basement for a swimming pool. But what they've been doing in China, Vietnam is buying illegal whole rhino horns, which they generally display on the mantelpiece. Yes, sometimes you do grind up a bit and you mix it with rice wine and you drink it after a dinner to celebrate a business deal. But it's basically bling, And what's the thing that always gets me, we just had World Ranger Day, that was on Wednesday, is that, we've been working with these guys on the ground for years and they will have signed up, become a ranger because generally they love the bush, they love being outdoors, they like camping, they love wildlife, they can't imagine a life in an office. And they've had to become soldiers and they've had to learn completely different skills. And they will go on overnight patrol, they'll wave, generally they're married, they've got kids, they wave goodbye to their families and the wives don't know if they're coming back. And the report that came out on World Ranger Day a couple of days ago was from the Thin Green Line Foundation, was that 57 rangers were killed in the line of duty just in the last year in Africa. And they talk about 1,000 being killed in the last decade. Now, in terms of rhino deaths, because, if you don't care about rhinos, you've got to care about the rangers who look after them, and it might not be rhinos, they're looking after all the other wonderful species that you see if you're lucky enough to go on safari. But 3 years ago, there were 3 rhinos being killed every day. We're talking like 1,500 a year being killed. So go to sleep one night, by the time you wake up the next morning for breakfast, another rhino's being killed. And again, the vets who signed up to be wildlife vets because they love the bush, maybe in the past they'd have had to deal with snare wounds. Now they're doing postmortems, cutting open maggot-infested, stinky corpses that blow up, with all the gas after 2 or 3 days, because they need to try and find a bullet, because then maybe the ballistics will match it to a weapon. If you can seize a weapon later, that will help you tie it to the carcass. And they're spending their days up to their elbows in blood and guts, and that's not why anybody wants to be a vet.
Yeah,
those numbers are just frightening at the same time, and I think that's the when it comes to rangers in particular, that those numbers are more than the British losses in Iraq and Afghanistan, to put that in perspective. So when people describe this as a war, it is. It's almost like a silent war that isn't getting the media coverage that.
Yeah. And people often ask about, is there such a thing as a shoot to kill policy? There isn't. The best, I've just kicked that stand.
Yeah, it'll be okay.
I really get this high because it seems to be slowly.
Shall I hold it up? So people ask, is there a shoot to kill policy? And there isn't. Their rangers have to be able to defend themselves. So part of the training we'll pay for is obviously, shooting practice and so on. But the best result is to be able to catch that poacher, because you then get a golden hour, as they talk about during the interrogation. If they can give you the information about who they were going to sell to, who was waiting for them, where the pickup point was, you can get a quick intercept. Then that takes you up the chain, because they reckon there are about 5 levels of poacher, from the shooter on the ground up through the local courier, the exporter, the importer, and the end consumer. And so if you can you don't want to just be catching level 1 poachers. You want to go further up that chain. Disrupting that chain is the quickest way to make the impact. So intel's everything.
Yeah, and I think that's an asset at the end of the day, isn't it? And I think that's what, when you can see it a lot online in forums and stuff like that, is a case of, well, just shoot them, good, and you can see sometimes like poachers get, there was a story recently that a group of poachers got caught by lion, and you kind of think, well, karma in that case. Yeah. But most of the time, because it's a chained thing, these poachers are just impoverished locals that are looking for a way out. They don't see it as a major problem, because you've got this guy paying this guy to this guy to this guy.
And possibly they're being lent on anyway and said, we'll beat up your wife unless you go out and poach. We need X number of rhino horns by this time tomorrow night, go and get us one, or you won't see your kids again.
Makes the kind of work that you do that reaches out into the communities in and around the conservancies and stuff as well, just all the more important.
Because again, if they trust you, if they know that you're providing good education for the kids, they will come to you with intel. They'll come tell you, look, there's a gang that's been coming in asking questions about patrol routines or the guys on the gate or whatever it is. You've got to build that local support.
Yeah. So, and when because it's this, the rangers almost act like a local police in that way, don't they? And that can also create a lot of conflicts when they're dealing with even like cattle thefts and things like that. That's when rangers can get caught up in a lot of things that even they didn't sign up to be soldiers in the first place, and they probably didn't sign up to be policemen either, but they end up getting drafted into these situations for the greater good of the Rhino, but because of this crisis that's been put on the
Barana, the second conservancy we run through on the Ultra, which had rhinos back in the 50s, 60s, lost them in the poaching crisis of the 70s, 80s. They were reintroduced in 2013, and they moved 20 across from next door Lewa, and then once the rhinos were established, 2 years later they dropped the fence, so now you've got this much bigger area, and their population is really exploding. It's fantastic. But so the last ranger casualty on Barana, it was a cattle rustling incident in a neighbouring Maasai community, and Barana was asked, could you send some of your national police reservists, some of your armed rapid response teams to come and get our cattle back? And they were caught in an ambush, and one of the guys, they all needed evacuating, one of the guys died. And so the money from ForRangers fundraising initiative went to a fund for the Rangers' widow and orphans. I mean, that's the kind of thing where you can a bit of money can make, it won't bring back the lost husband, the lost father, but it makes a difference to that family's lives.
Yeah, and I think that's when we started learning about this, that's when we thought, there's a part of me think this race seems like a cool idea, this is a great thing, but then there was a severity of it when we got there and we saw these kind of things on the ground, where I think we had like a conversation when I got back, and it was like we really need to make this work. And I think it was great. In our first year we raised 110,000, which was, I think, kind of took us all by surprise in terms of how well the fundraisers did and stuff like that. But maybe we've kind of shared some of the real statistics and insights into that, but let's start talking about now how this is making a difference, and the kind of there's obviously positive numbers, like you say. Lewa and Barana are starting to increase their numbers. I think they're over 100 now.
Yeah, of white, nearly of whites and of blacks.
Yeah. So, but the money that comes in on this race goes a long way, and this is where we're going to kind of let you have full reign on this, so you can tell us about.
We'll sit back for a little while.
Yeah, but tell us literally where that kind of money goes, and what direction it goes, and what gaps it fills.
Well, it's the most fun bit of my job, actually, is send it. You say, can you send us a proposal how you'd spend $10,000, and in comes the shopping list, and you think, yeah, we can tick that straight away. So kind of for all the conservancies, so with the ForRangers Ultra money from 2018, it's not just the 4 conservancies with rhinos, which are Lewa, Barana, Old Jogi, Old Pejeta, that we run through, but the neighbouring ones as well. So Lol Daiga, Sosian, Olinaishu. Oh God, I'm going to go blank. Can't remember. Another couple as well. So we invited them to submit their proposals, and for all of them, the kind of top priority is ranger welfare, because if you've got a happy, trained, motivated team, you've got good boundaries, you've got good neighbours, it all works. So top priority is make sure they've got the equipment they want. So whether that's webbings, boots, camo, rain ponchos, overnight bivvy bags, if they're out on overnight patrol, a lot of the money went on that kind of stuff. Also some ranger training, because that's absolutely essential. Keep them sharp. They're all going on tactical refresher courses every year with first aid medic courses, and then the commander cadre courses, how to be a leader, how to develop your men. The in-service training aspect of it's really important. I remember Lewa put in more solar panels on some of its more remote ranger outposts, because they want the guys to have a hot shower at the end of a patrol shift. And so they've got some light, not just for charging their torches and their cell phones or their Motorola radios, but so they can read at night. Some of them are studying, they're trying to improve their English or whatever, trying to learn their bird identification. Having a bit of electricity makes a hell of a difference.
Talk about the value of education and training, but you're cutting out so much time for people without electric lighting. It seems such a stupid thing, but it's key.
And it's on the equator, so you've got your 12 hours dark, 12 hours daytime. And I mean, that's the one thing with the race, it's regular as clockwork. There's no kind of calculations about how much, and dusk and dawn happen really quick, as we know. So yeah, it's small things that make a massive difference to their well-being. I mean, the ForRangers initiative with other funds raised, not because it's not just the ultra. We've had people knitting for rangers, kayaking. We've had them eating for rangers. You know,
sounds good.
dinners or whatever.
I could do that.
So I could do that.
I'd eat for you guys.
But they've bought life insurance, a whole bunch of gym equipment. So I think the ForRangers Ultra 2019 will see we've got these shipping containers that have all been refitted as gyms, and a whole bunch of dumbbells and weights and all sorts of things. Skipping ropes, everything. Yeah.
I can't remember the name of the guy on Labour. What was the ranger?
Edward Enduro too, or
it was Edward, I think. Yeah, so Edward was saying how they all love the running, but they hate the strength work that they get put through. So then a shipping container turns up with loads of kettlebells and weights, and they're probably like going, yeah.
Well, they're all built like Kipchoge. I'm not sure they've really got the biceps.
Not necessarily a powerlifter.
Because Soldier Pete's like, they can run for days with a backpack, but they can't do a pull-up.
Yeah.
No, they can't do a push-up, and like Soldier Pete wants them in fighting form. So
you're going to let some of them run along with the ultra this year?
Yeah,
great, because they're running it last year. It's wonderful. Every 300-400 yards there'd be a range, and you'd think you got the place yourself looking for a spot to go for a wee just by the side of the road, and you never could, because there's a range behind every bush.
Yeah, so we've said that, and we said that, you know, they can put forward a couple of rangers to run alongside the runners on that conservancy and stuff for the day, and become part of the race. And I think that's an element.
That'll be fantastic.
It's a charming element we have of most of our races, isn't it? We have a local contingent of some description. Like, we've opened up the Ice Ultra to the locals do the final 15k with the runners. The jungle has the locals. The desert, we've got 4 local Namibians running this year.
Great.
So yeah, and it's only a matter of time that we get the Rangers making a team, and I get Pete will get them carrying a log or something like that.
We know they'll have to run with full packs and with
full
their guns above their heads. It'll be like
that.
You can be that American sergeant major that shouts at them.
But yeah, no, I think
that to Pete.
It would just add to that community feel that we really had last year, where every ranger you passed without fail had a beaming grin on his face and wanted to say hello and how are you, and it was everybody involved in it felt invested in it.
Yeah.
Well, and talking to Sam afterwards, he said it was fun for the Rangers because it was a change from a routine, because, you know, 365 days a year they're out patrolling, and stuff happens. You know, I had a call from Jamie Gamer the other morning, Jamie from Algeria, and he said, you wouldn't believe this, but today I had a guy flattened by a buffalo. He got up and walked, which is pretty amazing. A vehicle broke down, and then some other ridiculous, a zebra dropped dead of some weird disease. And, you know, so yes, unusual things happen in the bush, but the Rangers' lives are pretty repetitive. Just like I go to the office Monday to Friday, I sit at a laptop and I write proposals. But for them to see 45 people come from all over the world to come and run through that 70 this year, to come run through their patch and to raise funds for them, that blew them away. They kind of couldn't quite get their heads around why people would do this for them, and that was a morale booster in itself. And it's quite, you know, I'm welling up now thinking about it, because I love that it's a two-way thing. You know, I was mainly walking, so I remember a ranger called Daniel. We did a couple of hours together one afternoon, and we were talking about our lives and comparing similarities. We could have spent any amount of time thinking about differences, but it was great that you get to spend quality time with people.
I had a few runners come to me after the race that were saying that it became a bit of a repeated thing, that the Rangers would be thanking them as they went along the course.
Yeah.
Like, are you joking?
Yeah. I mean, you think you might high five people as you go past, because, you know, but
thanks for coming. Yeah. Well, couldn't be more welcome. I
think it's just the perfect example of, because, you know, our office is in London. We can't often take people to see the work that we do in the field for real. But this is just fantastic. You get to run a really classy ultra. You're in Big Five country. You will see rhinos during your time. You even see, should have been 3 northern white rhinos last time. It's 2, because Sudan, the world famous Sudan, the last male northern white rhino died. But you will see rhinos on this trip, and you'll see elephants, and you certainly see buffaloes and zebras. Maybe you'll see a lion. We heard lions.
Oh, we did.
Night 3. There was one in the
That-
orphanage, and there was one roaring away outside, wasn't he, patrolling?
There was one I didn't tell most of the runners this, but the day before the race, there was one just sat on the start line.
I heard about that.
We went to go check
I've heard about it now.
Yeah, we went to go check the campsite the day before the race and just make sure they're all set up. And I looked and went, "Are you going to be there tomorrow? Is he?"
Here's one we laid on for you earlier.
And then he just walked off. I was like, "Okay."
Hey, you know what? There was a moment on that first night that really brought the reality of it to me as well. Where me and Andy jumped in a car because we just needed to go just through the gate and around the corner and go and plug in a couple of batteries to charge up or something along those lines. 5-10 meters outside the gate, hyena standing right in the middle of the road, just staring at us in the headlights, and they are bigger than they look in The Lion King.
Everything is bigger when you're on foot.
God, yeah.
When you're on foot, it's twice the size.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
they're about. It's a cool element to the race there.
no, absolutely.
So while you are listening to this, if you're one of our plucky pal subscribers and listening to this as recorded or as it just comes out, the race is actually on now. So I imagine there's going to be a serious case of FOMO on your part. Are you going to be in the office at that point? Or?
Actually, no. I'm going to be on holiday in Indonesia, but at the end
That'll
of it,
soften the blow a little bit.
I'm going to see the Sumatran Rhino Sanctuary.
Okay, so you're not. That'll soften the FOMO.
Yeah, it will. So I'll get to see their gorgeous little furry orange things. They're really okay. That wasn't a technical. I did say we're non-scientific, non-jargon.
Yeah,
yeah. But I, having finished last year, I said never again. I really am gonna not do these
My Ultra boots are hung up.
Yeah, and lo and behold, when we showed people the video from last year, we had so many friends who said, "We want to come do it with you." So Kenneth and I can't really say, "Come on, friends, come and do it, and we'll see you at the finish line." So I'm going to be back next year.
Fantastic.
Yeah, rhino costume coming back.
I don't know.
Go for the race this time.
I think at least 2 of the other women, if not 3 from our office, are going to come do it as well. So you never know. If there's enough of us, we'll bring the costume.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're. Well, if you're listening to this, Will may be dangling upside down from a helicopter, Steven Seagal style, taking pictures.
Steven Seagal style.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
no.
have hair less like Steven Seagal. I'm like
Jason
the
Statham.
opposite. Yes.
Jason
Statham in my way out of a helicopter.
A cross
right now.
between Jason Statham and that bird that used to do Great British Bake Off. You know, there was the 2 girls that did it.
Mel and Sue.
Yeah, he looks a bit like a cross between Jay Statham and Mel.
Which nobody ever.
Or is
thought
it
they
Sue?
were gonna say.
Sue Perkins, isn't it? Yeah, Sue Perkins. There you go.
Yeah, you know what? I'll take that. I'm flattered on both sides of that.
Yeah, so Will's going to be dangling upside down from a helicopter,
But apologies to Sue Perkins.
taking photos of runners and really being excited over the levels of 4G that we get on this race, because we don't get that on any of our races. I will be in a car somewhere listening to radio chatter in Swahili, trying to figure out what the hell is being said, with the odd word of buffalo, rhino, lion being thrown into the mix and me flipping out. And Cathy will be stroking furry orange rhinos.
I will.
Yeah, so it's going to be, if you're listening to this, we're having a great time, and I hope you are too, listening in.
Yeah, we hope you are too, but also we hope you're a little bit jealous.
Yeah, and the first part of this, we sneakily announced that the ballot was open. We're now sneakily telling you the ballot will soon close. So when you listen to this will be around the time, there'll be during the race, so around the 18th to 20th of September probably. It closes, the ballot will close shortly after, 2 weeks after the race finishes. So get your entry in for the following year if you're feeling like this thing is for you. 70 places.
Although, frankly, if it isn't sold out by this point.
Yeah, I mean, well, it may possibly be, but you've got to get your ballot entry in to be in for a chance.
Absolutely.
Get your ticket.
Get in there, get on the reserve list.
Yeah, get in there and get part and make a difference. Hopefully this has inspired you guys to, you've heard enough information about this cause to get involved. If you think this isn't my cup of tea because I'm not there yet in my training, Save the Rhino have got a whole list of things you can do. They are not shy at getting people into rhino suits.
Knit for Rangers.
Eat for Rangers.
Eat for Rangers. I'm getting on board.
We
with
like
that.
the baking
Cathy
for
Buttall.
Rangers.
Baking
that's
for
pretty
Rangers.
Cool.
That is, yeah. I could get on board with that. That's the only circumstance. That's the only circumstance I'll wear the rhino costume, is if it's a eating competition. I'm not.
Just a bit awkward to see what you're doing with the whisk.
Rhinos are very good at using whisks. But then,
it's been a more suggestive episode than I expected.
It's like a carry-on episode, isn't it? But yeah, get involved, do that way. If you've got any questions or any further questions towards Cathy is, and the team at Save the Rhino are more than happy to answer rhino-related questions, or even bakery-related questions. Let's throw that curveball in there.
If you've got Jack, they can talk to Jack on that.
Got any baking questions you want in? Throw them in. Save the Rhino are good for answering that.
Why not?
Follow the race live on the website if you're listening at the appropriate time. It's on
if you're listening
our
right
website.
Now, they are out there, and you can watch the dots.
Yeah, you can watch dots going around.
You won't believe how little work you'll get done while you are following.
And if there are two on top of each other, that means the rhino costume's there.
Yeah, that's it.
Probably.
Possibly. And then you can actually donate. So while the race is on, there'll be a donation link that will
absolutely
we'll be publishing on all of the social media channels, so you don't even have to run or participate, but you can chuck in a few quid.
You can be involved with what we're doing.
Yeah, and I think if you're going to buy anyone a beer, the Rangers deserve it. A couple of quid towards a Ranger, and you could be putting money towards simple things like socks and boots that they need, or even welfare for them, education, insurance, like we've discussed. You could be throwing some kettlebells at them to make sure they're...
Don't throw kettlebells at them. That's a terrible idea.
You could be, like we've discussed, just a few, and I think what would be good is if in the description, more work for Will here, if he can put the blog that we produced together about where exactly every penny of that money went in terms of the race last year.
Okay, so I need to write that. Then we'll.
No, we've got it.
We've got some nice photos.
Yeah, that's already in circulation. So thanks for listening, guys. Thanks again, Cathy, for giving us your beautiful
thank you very much
studio
for letting us invade your home as well.
And spending the time with us. And now we are going to be socialising.
Yes, half an hour to the BTU social.
Excellent.
See you later, guys.
See you later, guys.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.